I'll set the ball rolling. Welcome everybody to this first gathering of the Hunter Living Histories for this year. We're calling it a showcase, and I'd like to acknowledge the land of the Awabakal people where I'm currently coming from, and everybody at the University of Newcastle is. And we welcome their elders, both past, present, and those yet to be, to the proceedings today. And I also want to extend that acknowledgement to the Aboriginal peoples of the lands that you're zooming in, and also acknowledge any traditional Aboriginal people and Indigenous peoples that are joining us today. I would love that spirit to infuse everything we discuss today. Even though we're discussing lots of European type of histories, I think it's really important that we couch everything in the idea that we are living in an Aboriginal world as well, and start to acknowledge that in everything that we do. Anyway, so greetings and thank you. We're just changing the format a little, moving away from the sort of structured meeting. I've been greatly inspired by the Mike Walsh show that I grew up with, and I know that many of you grew up with, and it was much more entertaining and much more informal. And I think that that's basically what we're going to try and imbue with these meetings, where we're just going to invite people to join us as guests and explain for however long they can stay with us on. And, you know, if we've got I always remember Dr. Wright answering all our medical questions, and I spoke to Amir this morning. So if you've got any conservation issues or things to do with problems with how to keep your photographs or anything, we get a critical mass of questions about conservation things, and I'll bring on Dr. Amir to come and explain those things. And similarly with any other university expertise that we might be able to share out there in the community. Okay, so any apologies, Anne?
Yeah, we've got an apology from Sonia Hornery, Mary Gleeson and Jeffrey Freeman.
Thank you. Any others that people want to report who can't make it today?
Bob Donnelly.
Thank you. He's in Canberra, isn't he?
Bob's in Tasmania.
Tasmania, okay. You searching?
He's been sent to Port Arthur.
Oh, okay. Well, I hope not for the term of his natural life.
He lost his wallet at Port Arthur. There's a lot of pickpockets there, Bob. Yeah,
okay.
2.5 weeks to go.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And we're probably expecting other people to join us. Peter Herbans from Sydney will be joining us later, and also our state member for Newcastle, Tim Crackenthorpe, as well as our university librarian, Coral Black, after 2. All right, so first cab off the rank is Marla Scorse, our manager of special collections, to just explain a few of the new changes that are being rolled out in the way that we deal with inquiries. Over to you, Marla.
Thanks, Johnny. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the meeting. I'm going to share my screen with you in a moment just to share some of our new services that we've got for accessing our collections here at Special Collections. So bear with me. I'm just going to pop up on the screen our slideshow. Okay, so next week we're going to be holding a small launch for our beautiful new reading room, which sits just outside our Special Collections office at the university, which you can see Alison modelling here. And the Special Collections reading room is now open by appointment for access to our rare books collection and archives. So we're going to be open 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, and we take bookings between 10 and 12 and 1 and 3 each day. And we're just getting the message out about how to do that through our new booking system. So bookings will need to be made 2 working days in advance now to allow us to retrieve all of the materials that you might need and to coordinate our staff to make that happen. We are also very excited to launch our new virtual reading room service. So I'll show you an image in a little while with our wonderful new equipment, which means that those those who are researching and unable to make it into the Auckland Moody Library can actually book a virtual appointment with us, and we can use our special new cameras to guide you through some of the collections that you might be wishing to access. So the other space that we also have bookable now for our students and researchers is the GlamX Lab. So this is for all of the wonderful things that Anne does with 3D scanning and working with audiovisual equipment, the microfilm reader and our VR materials as well. So all of the bookings for these can be made through our library bookings and appointments link. So if you do go to the university library webpage and you follow the links to special collections, you can then hit the link to get to our library bookings and appointments. And as you can see on the slide here, you just select the special collections appointment on campus, and by the end of the month we'll have that virtual service available to select as well. There's a little calendar here, so you can select the day you'd like to come in and visit us and the time over here. And then you can select over here whether you want the reading room, or if you're working on a university project in the GlamX Lab, you can also select from those options as well. So when you go in and you select your date and your time, it will ask you for all of your details, whether you're a community researcher or a student or staff of the university. And we just ask for as much detail from you as possible so we can go and retrieve all of those materials that you might be needing. So the other new service that we have is our new inquiry form. So we're retiring our very well-known archives email, which I'm sure many of you have used to contact us in the past. We have a new system where you follow the link through to our inquiry form from the webpage, and that will come through to all of us, and that will make sure it goes to the best person to answer your inquiry quickly. So we ask that now, instead of using that old archives email, you pop in through our website and follow the inquiry form booking, or we're happy to send you that link as well. So when you go in and follow that link, you'll go through to our inquiry form, and you'll put in all of your contact details and your question. There's a little section down the bottom to add attachments. So if you are letting us know about a possible donation, or you've got something to show us, you can pop in your attachments down the bottom as well.
Oh, no, these are the people in.
So that's all of the new stuff. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, but if anybody's got any questions, more than happy to answer those, and we hope to hear from you through the inquiry form or see you in our reading room soon.
Just one question. Will the GlamX Lab be available for professional staff to use or just academics?
So it's professional staff as well, Johnny. Anyone associated with any of the projects that are happening through GlamX for that one. Yep.
That was from Michelle. And that's it. So if you have any other questions, just let us know and we'll endeavour to answer them for you.
Or if you want us to send that link out to you so you've got it handy, we can do that as well.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Marla. Okay, now to the first of our two presentations. This is on the Fortress Newcastle Living Histories by Rachel Vaughan, who was a University of Sydney intern working with Anne. Anne, did you? Hello? Hello? Who's having lunch?
There might be someone in the background. I might actually suggest everyone put themselves on mute, if that's okay, except for the speakers.
Yes.
So Rachel Vaughan was, as said, University of Sydney intern last year, who is almost completed postgrad studies in museum studies, and she worked with the Fortress Newcastle team to create a collection on living histories. So I think Rachel is with us. If you
Yes, I am. I am.
So welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to speak today and to share what I was working on with you at the end of last year. I'm zooming in from Guringai and Darrell Glen today, so I'm a little bit further south than I think most of you will be. As Anne and Genevieve already said, that I'm from University of Sydney, and I was working with the GLAMAX lab at the end of last year. I came in on the much larger Fortress Newcastle project, which was already well underway by the time I began, and I've completed my internship still, and they'll be continuing on in the lead up to the exhibition that'll be coming in a couple of months. So as I was coming into the project sort of at the end of, I think they were wrapping up post-production on the film at that time, I was very aware that I would only be a very small component of that much larger project, and that I would be working mostly, as I was through special collections and with the GLAMAX lab, that I'd be working with primary sources and needed to find a way that we'd make that useful to other members of the community, as well as the Fortress Newcastle team. So my work was to assemble the Fortress Newcastle collection, as Anne's already stated, on the Living Histories platform. And so that was bringing together a bundle of material that was already available on Living Histories and with special collections, but that was also material that had already been arranged by the Fortress Newcastle team as they were making their film with Glenn and Tony, as well as material held from other historical societies, and whatever sources sort of came into us from locals and other interested individuals. And yes, I'll share now my screen so you can see what we were able to produce on Living Histories. Everyone can see the front page of Living Histories, okay?
Yes.
Thank you. So if you went to the main search, you're able to type in Fortress Newcastle. Otherwise, you'd be able to search by collection here. My internet will go nice and quick, so this will work. Beautiful. So Fortress Newcastle collection straight here. And so this is the main interface page of the Fortress Newcastle collection. You'll be able to see the first thing that's on the page is the embedded film, which I think is a great way for people to learn very quickly the big story, but also to hear those beautiful interviews that they were able to do in the Life Under Threat film. Also a bit of an introduction if people have either not seen the film or this is the very first time that they're hearing about Fortress Newcastle, they can learn a little bit more about it. Also related to some other topics that have been indexed already within Living Histories. Of course, we wanted to acknowledge the very, very many people that have been involved in the Fortress Newcastle project, and everyone here has been that has an existing sort of website or platform have been hyperlinked in there. So hopefully that will direct on to any of those societies. Now we have a great many formats and great many sources to include here, and so we had to be quite selective as to what went on to the collection. They are organised by format, so you'll be able to see by photograph, by publication, by plan, audio tape, and for videos as well. I might just show you something from the photographs page. There is an extra page to click on there, but you'll be able to click through individual items and see if I've been able to signpost where that exact location may be. It'll pop up on the map here. It'll link it to the Fortress Newcastle collection, and also you'll be able to see some information, a description, the subjects on the other side as well. And for each of those items, there have been as much detail as has been provided. So a great way for, hopefully for researchers to be able to continue on if they've been, if there's an area of interest, if they want to look at the AWAS or if they want to look at a particular fort location, that they're able to find that nice and easy. We were also very fortunate that Special Collections had in their inventory some beautiful magazines. I particularly enjoyed going through the Country Woman in New South Wales publication and finding some things to digitise. So this was one in particular that was great to have included. So you can see there the AWAS women being sent off to defend the coastal defences of New South Wales. So we're very fortunate that we had some great material to be able to pull together. And hopefully it's a diverse mix of material that sort of talks about the Fortress Newcastle quite broadly as the network that it was. It's not some isolated fort just within Newcastle. Obviously, it's extending all the way into Port Stephens and all the way south into Lake Macquarie. So I hope you enjoy going through the different material. We were very fortunate to pull some oral histories as well that discuss people's lives during World War II, Second World War, and also linking to some videos that are available on YouTube, but are able to be clicked on here. I probably just want to end by saying a lot of thank yous to the many contributors that helped with this collection. Obviously, the Fortress Newcastle team have a big team behind them already, but obviously a big thank you to Anne and Johnny and the Special Collections team for your support of the work that I was doing. A big thank you to Ron, I think he was here today, Ron Barber from Fort Scratchley, for letting me come and have a look at your beautiful collection. Steve Ward was another big help as well in bringing this together. And obviously Bob Cook, David Dial, running the show over at Del Pratt. So thank you very much. If you have any questions about the collection, you're more than welcome to ask, but this is available, it's live now, and you can search for it on Living Histories.
Thanks very much, Rachel. Are there any questions at all?
Maybe
Owen Gunn story.
just trying to find them.
Yeah, the videos of the Owen Gun are up online. I'm not sure if they've been linked into that.
Yes,
Okay.
they have.
They have.
Oh,
That's
okay.
great. Yeah,
I'll
They're
follow
very,
through,
some
sorry.
very proud Owen Gun fans out there. I think the comments keep rolling in. So, but thanks very much, Rachel, for doing that
great.
work again in another lockdown
Mm.
scenario. So, and thanks for everyone that made it feel welcome. David, did you want to say something or?
Yes, Johnny, I'd just like to personally congratulate Rachel for her fortitude and input and dedication to telling the part of it, well, putting together the story about the Fortress Newcastle. Very well done under very trying circumstances as well.
Thank you, David.
I don't often give praise, but praise is truly deserved in your case, Rachel, and congratulations once again.
Oh, I'm very appreciative of that. Thank you very much. That's very, very kind.
I hope we can keep in touch in the future if you need anything to do with any information about also Hunter Valley military history.
That would be fantastic. Thank you. I might ask for your email address from Anne or Johnny afterwards. That would be great.
Yes, that'd be fine. That'd be fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have a presentation from Pauline Ibbotson from the Stroud Historical Society on the early artefacts of Carrington and Tarlee in Port Stephens. So this is a very interesting area, especially in the early AA company history. And I'm fascinated. I'm looking forward to hearing about this. Where are you?
I'm
There you
here.
are. Excellent.
Don't be too
And I hope it all
fascinated.
works out. And thanks very much for Robert for helping everybody.
Yes, thank you, Robert. It's
Are you
great.
okay, that's good.
Well, as you can see, my name's Pauline, and I'm definitely the least qualified to be sitting here because I have absolutely no local ancestry in my blood. Unlike my two friends here, who will just stick their heads in, Jan on my left and Stephanie on my right. We do, however, all share a mutual passion for history, and I first met Jan and Stephanie when they visited me at the courthouse a couple of years ago, seeking material about Stroud and Carrington and Tarlee. And with our mutual interests, we have become friends and regularly share research material. Jan not only is a lifelong friend of Stephanie's, but is the one who brought Stephanie's plight to my attention in the first place. She's also I'm going to put this bit in, she's also the author of several beautiful coffee table books written over the past 20 years about local Port Stephens and Mid-Coast area. Jan is now in the process of writing another book, and at the ripe old age of young age of 85, and with my knowledge of the amount of time and commitment afforded to compiling her books, I believe this will most likely be her final works, which incidentally is very relevant to the upcoming bicentenary of the establishment of the Australian Agricultural Company in London in 1824, and the first settlement in Australia in Carrington in 1826. If a little bit of time permitted at the end, Jan can give you just a brief talk about her book. But this presentation day is for you, Stephanie. I don't think Stephanie will mind me sharing with you that she is dealing with a very difficult health situation. But by telling her story, this will hopefully give some peace of mind that her impressive collection of historical information, photographs, artifacts, and china remnants from the creeks and riverbeds around Carrington and Tarlee over the past 6 decades. She's been a keen little historian right from a young child, and then so meticulously collated and catalogued, and she's hoping that it won't just disappear into anonymity, but will hopefully find a worthy custodian for future generations to enjoy. Stephanie's knowledge of the nooks, crannies, creeks and riverbeds and tracks in this area would be second only to that of our earliest Aboriginal inhabitants. Anyway, here is a small selection of Stephanie's collection. So,
Excellent.
right,
That's
okay.
slide 2.
Is that all right?
Yep, I can
Right,
see Carrington
okay.
from Tarleague House.
Yes,
grounds.
that's just an old 1853 one with two
Yep.
the kangaroos. Now,
Yep.
this is some china, part of the
Yep.
china. Stephanie has a huge range of china that she has found, and I'll just keep going on this for
Yep.
a moment, right?
And you have to scroll down as you go so that you
Yes.
can see the
Sorry
slides.
about this. I've still got that thing at the top, so I don't know what it is. Have to have a chat with you, Robert, later. So even along the paths, these were exposed after rain. Stephanie's been collecting this literally since she's a child. Her descendant, she is a descendant of original families and a lot of connections. And then we get onto some clay pipes. You get it?
Opium pipe.
You can still see it.
Are you getting clay pipes?
Yeah.
And then these are some items found behind Warrington. Lovely car, little car keys, a yo-yo.
Handmade nails.
And then we have some hand nails and a wedge used for tree lopping. Remnant of corner posts. Are you seeing all this?
Yes, we're seeing all this.
Okay.
Have the find sites for all these things been recorded as well?
Have the what?
Has the location where all these objects?
Yes, Stephanie does have. You have it. You catalogued where they are. Yes, and where I've put on shoreline. You know where on shoreline?
Exactly where on
Yes,
shoreline.
it's the whole sort of area. Some of them she can say yes, the church.
Yeah.
On building sites and buildings that have burnt down that left their nails and.
Yes, and also
Can you hear Stephanie? Or
also on the
Barely.
Okay, can you come a little?
Yeah. That's pieces of lime, cement, and pottery. That was a garden hedge at Tarlee House.
Can you hear that?
Yep.
Right. Okay. And then we move on to this ointment pot found in a dam on Carrington Creek. Stephanie
Great condition.
Told me, yes, well, it's actually Stephanie's told me she has rarely had to dig for any of these. She's found most things after rain, and they're often been as clean as you're looking at. Then we move on to the blacking jar. Was that one the blacking jar?
Yes.
Yes, blacking jar. Blake Street was the early settlement area, and the others were in Carrington Creek. Now, this spoon found on the waterfront, and the platter was found at Carrington Church, in the church.
Under something.
Yes. These items, the following items, are actually from Tarley House. Stephanie has a big connection with Tarley and the families that have lived there. The history goes right back to White, Robert.
No, that's Debbie's thing.
Oh, Debbie's fame. So, see, I told you I didn't know anything. No, there is a couple of residents in Carrington that have a lot of connection with the original families in the cemetery, and who have brought 4 generations back to Tarley House when R.H.D. White owned it. And then I've just, there's some more here. These are from Tarley House, or found. This was from Tarley House. And then I'm just going to stick this in of my own. I'll pull it up, because I was offered this. This was found in an auction house in Scotland, and I got a message from an email from the art dealer asking if I could verify where this was, because written on the back, you probably can't see it, it actually says Port Stephens, estate of the Australian Agricultural Company, and it appears, and that's the name of the artist, who's Buelle, B-U-E-L-L-E, which I can't find much on, and it believed it was commissioned by Colonel or Mrs. C.I. Scott. Now, Scott is an old name from Carrington, one of the early names buried there, but it's not a C.I. So this could be a relative or a descendant. But it's a beautiful little thing, and I bought it, and I have brought it back to Australia. And it's really pretty. It's very small, but that is Tarley House in 1828. So I was quite excited about that. The Historical Society didn't want to buy it, so I did. Have I lost you? Are you there?
No, that's fascinating.
Yeah. Sorry about that, everybody. But it was my first
That's okay.
PowerPoint.
That's all right.
Yes. So basically, that's just a very tiny selection from Stephanie's thing, but she has a large selection, and obviously she is worrying about her longevity, and we're looking for options of where this collection can go to. Yeah.
That's all right.
So there are some options here that we could pursue. Obviously, if a museum could take her collection, it would be wonderful. But we are able possibly.
So, if someone were to visit Tarley today, there's no place that they can go to see things like this, or
nothing. But funny you should say that, because Tarley House has just been taken over. Well, I say taken over, there's new people there, and we believe they're to do with the ministry, But
Okay.
the people who are in residence there, they are actually very keen to learn a lot about the area, to restore different things there. And Jan has suggested that maybe they could have a room in Tarley House designated to collections around.
Yeah, because you've got
So-
great signs on the highway, you know,
Yes.
inviting people to go there. So what do they
Yes.
what do they see when they get there? You know,
Exactly.
Is
Well,
this
at
a-
the moment, it's mainly Christians camping there, you know. But we do have the issue of the cemetery. Sorry to rattle on here, but the cemetery is very close to my heart because it hasn't been open to the public for years,
Okay.
and it should be. So, without to cut a long story short, we have a few of us that are endeavouring to get the access road opened, and we're quite a long way down doing it. We have the help of Tattersall Lander, who's offered to survey the area and everything, and we've spoken with council, and we think that our biggest problem is the new owner of the land. They think they own it, and they don't.
Okay.
We have proven that in 1907 the AA company delegated the access road to council as a public road, and we're just getting that all the little bits and pieces now. And once that happens, and I think that the access road is there again, and people can get into the cemetery, because the cemetery is an incredible part of history of the area.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the first cemetery. So I may be to report back on that a little later, because that will open up Carrington considerably. If and as you say, we could go to Tarley and see what can happen with the collection.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I don't know what to say except that there might be some possibilities there for student and academic involvement in some form or another, because it's a very, I mean, we've got archives relating to Tarley and Carrington. It's been quite an interesting sort of place, and a place that's generated a lot of research interest over the years. I'm kind of a little shocked that there isn't anywhere that you can go and see anything, because most people would expect that there would be some kind of a place, you know.
yes.
So,
Well, I think there was any assistance in joining forces with us, because you're right. I mean, and especially as we're coming up to the 200th year bicentenary, the AA company are on board to celebrate. Yeah.
That's good. Well, that's pretty good having a company on board. That's good.
Yes.
Look, all we can do, Pauline, is just basically, we'll flag it as an issue, because I mean, part of these meetings is basically understanding what's going on in the communities that you need help with, and then just joining the dots with networks of people that might be interested through academic research or through student involvement. That's basically what happened with the Fortress Newcastle project. Is basically a series of community groups got around an idea, and then funding opportunities came through, and we were able to work in involvement. So anyway, well, thanks for. Are there any questions for Pauline, Stephanie, or Jan that anyone would like to ask?
Yeah, I would.
Yep.
Oh, well, I'd like to say.
Oh, look,
something
are you going to
anyway.
have to put up your hands or something, or
Yes,
give me a sign, and please accept my apologies if I don't find you.
Come in as close as you can, Stephanie.
What I'm going to say is, I've walked the area with my grandkids and we've had a great time, but every track links up to where the old buildings were, and you can still see slight remnants. So it'd be a good archaeological dig.
Yeah, well, Pauline, we'd love to show you this 1853 map that I've tried to overlay on Tarley, because that whole area appears in another map that was done in 1826 as well, of various features on that landscape that might be very interesting to you if you haven't already seen it.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. Well,
But the 1853 one, especially because it's like I can see sort of remnants of wharves here and there. But maybe you need someone who's close to the landscape like yourself to really identify what's still there and what's not, and where these tracks go. So because they're probably covered over, but it'd be a fascinating project for some for some honours student or something. So we'll see if we can join the dots on that one. Because it'd be fantastic to see what still survives.
Wonderful.
No, and I do. Oh, no, I forgot what I was going to say. Forget what I was going to say.
Well, what I was going to say was you can look at the old maps and until you live there, I lived there for a long time and walked it in all different weathers. You can't really, it doesn't equate with the way the tracks are now.
Okay.
The waterfront changed, everything changed. But we had the fire through, and you could see the old tracks. And you can see where all the different things were, and everything links up. It was very well set out.
And I think you'll find, Johnny, that Jan's book is going to cover with the maps and everything you're talking about. She has incredible.
It's got hundreds of
incredible detail.
Got hundreds of photos, and I'm hoping to have it finished by 2024 when they're having their
Robert's just suggested we have a Hunter Living Histories excursion.
Absolutely right. Exactly. You need one. I mean, I suggested that back in October.
Now, this book, Pauline, is it published, or what's happening with the book?
No, we're hoping to get it published towards the end of 2024.
Okay.
It's in its final stages, but I've got to have it edited and a whole lot of work yet to be done.
Okay.
But there's hundreds of photographs and maps and of present day Tarlee, Carrington, the whole history is there.
Okay.
So it's quite a large volume.
And I know there's a lot of articles being written on that area, but honestly, Jan has researched and got photos and things that and information that hasn't been in any previous books.
No.
Okay.
So it's going to be a great book for the bicentenary.
Wonderful. All right. Again, any questions?
Johnny, through you to Robert, I think we should put the band back together, Robert, and we could do something up there that would be, we could interpret something from that lovely lady and put it with the maps.
That would be lovely. That would be very nice. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, we'll flag that with our historians. What do you think, Anne?
Yeah, look, I think it's such a valuable history, and I was really taken by Pauline's artwork. And if that was sort of a pickup, I don't know where it's been hiding, but there's not many colour artworks of that area in the 1800s. It actually looks like an Edward Close. And I just think it'd be a fantastic student project, or we can somehow overlay some of those artworks and maps. Maybe some of the surveying students, or could be something.
Yeah, because I have got just jumping to that map, that painting of yours, Pauline. There was a couple of paintings that are held maybe at the State Library. I can't remember. But we did post them up on the Hunter Living History site. You should compare them with what you've got, because they're very reminiscent of the same thing. But like, it's always been one of those fascinating sort of areas. I mean, I've been there physically, but I'd love to visit. So
you must come.
Hopefully, hopefully it'd be a good opportunity to go and see it, because it is just full of history, and it's very important to Aboriginal people, because the collections that I was talking about were kept by Aboriginal researchers, Rita Smith. So she was an associate of Perce Haslam, and she's got a big folder on Carrington, I think, and Tarlee and that whole area. So there's a lot of information flowing around. So it's really, and it features on this 1826 map by Ebsworth, who was one of the early AA company people who recorded all the Aboriginal place names around the site. And Tarlee, obviously, in Karua, and all those things are sort of words that are really interesting and fascinating to know the meanings of.
Jan actually, oh, sorry, I was just going to say, Jan says she has that map in her new book.
Good.
So, as I say, she has wonderful, wonderful research material.
Excellent.
But just quickly, there's a walk from Karua to Tarlee House, and a couple of historical societies did it a few years ago. Unfortunately, I couldn't go, but that would be a wonderful occasion for
Excuse me,
people to come.
That walk can link up with right round walking the waterfront to Tarlee to Carrington. Everything links up. That's not made. Oh, well, if you follow it more,
you need to come, Johnny.
Yes,
you all need to come up for a field trip.
Well, all the tracks are still there, and if you know what you're looking for, you can see whether they're well and old bricks.
Oh, sorry, Doug wants to say something. Doug, are you just?
I just think it's absolutely fascinating, and you know, I knew the area very well in the old days, back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, really. But when we were doing the Hunter 2000 document, and we were trying to get some of the AA company land into parks, but yes, I thought I was just outraged when I thought that you couldn't get into the cemetery nowadays. I mean, you used to be able to wander around everywhere. And I do remember the old home very well, and it's just absolutely magic to see that painting that's of the area. But I used to teach at Nelson Bay in those days, and there was some sort of religious organisation there that established at Tarlee.
Yes. That is who owns it now, Tarlee.
Okay.
It is
It's an American.
but it's an American company, and they have. I haven't met them, but Jan has. But they are very keen to bring Tarlee House back to how it should be. So I think we have to pursue that more.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see what we can do here. We can what sort of interest we can rustle up at the university on this, and see if we can get a little team happening
That would
for
be
you. All right. Well, thank you very much, Pauline, Jan, and Stephanie, for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There is a bridge at the back of Tarlee that doesn't seem to be mentioned anywhere, and I don't know. It's just you can drive right up the back.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
all right. Well, many thanks for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank
Lovely.
you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Well, we'll move on. Anne, you've got some news to tell us about an Aboriginal breastplate.
Yes, I'll just bring it up on the screen. One other thing I just thought of to do with Tarlee is maybe some creative industry students creating a walking brochure would probably be good. Okay, so this came about through Dr. Alison Clark from the National Museums in Scotland. So she reached out to the Hunter Living Histories community during January. They have a really interesting item in their collection, and it's an Aboriginal breastplate with the inscription Sandy, Chief of Korongori. So she's basically asking the question, who was Chief Sandy, who gave him the breastplate, and where in New South Wales or Australia might have it been given and was located. So I put the blog post together. Interestingly, the single breastplate is in a larger collection, and it's the only Australian artefact within the collection. They know that it came from a Scottish collector who never visited Australia, and the National Museums of Scotland acquired it back in the early 1900s. So she's doing some research on it. She's done some background research in terms of breastplates and where they were used. This one here, it looks as if it's got its original sort of twine, and typically a lot of them have metal like chains, where this has got something a little bit more organic. It looks as if it's been made out of grass. So she's reached out to the community just to ask people a little bit more about it. So what she's particularly interested in is the term Korongori. She did find one exact spelling and a source to it down at the State Library of New South Wales. And it relates to some papers put together by William Cawthorne, who was a British artist and teacher. And he'd been sent a list of Aboriginal families from the Korongori tribe. It's actually spelt slightly differently. It's got another O in it. But linking it possibly to the Korongori tribe living in Patrick Plains near Singleton District. So that's one link she's looking into. The only other, or the couple of other possible links is this one at Bingra. So I actually, when she was really interested in the place names, and the names often related to the pastoral estates and the runs, and this was sort of a fairly close match that came from the Cannon Stretch project and the mapping that was done a few years ago. So you can see Stretch, he documented the names and then the possible Aboriginal meaning of the name. Also got the locations here, 28E. So I sent that to Dr. Clark, and she was able to sort of look a little bit further into these possible runs that are located up near the Guida River and Bingra and Inverell, so sort of the middle and up north of New South Wales. So this, I'll just show you where Cannon Stretch's papers are located. So they've been digitised and they're available on the Living Histories platform. As you can see, you can search through alphabetically, but yeah, this was the page that showed it's exactly where that name was. There's also a good way of actually finding the location then, that all these places were mapped. You can sort of download a KNZ file, which is where 5,500 of these places were mapped. So you can open a file in Google Earth. The researcher was able to actually go straight to the map online and generally find it within that grid. But you can see here where it takes a little bit to download. But once you know the general area, you can sort of search it online as well. And I think I probably have to possibly have to download this one too, but I thought I'd point it out just for people that have got Google Earth and haven't sort of used it too much. So here we've got like Craigie map, which is the map that Stretch actually used when he was driving around New South Wales.
I think, Anne, if you open up another sort of application, you have to, because we can see the Stretch listing, but we can't see the...
Oh, you can't see the map. Oh,
no, the Google
sorry.
Earth. So it's either you have to, I forget the trick, you have to stop sharing this one,
okay.
reshare the Google Earth screen.
Yeah. So sorry about that. I didn't realise I couldn't see.
That's okay, I've done it myself with...
Yeah. So anyhow, what I'll do, I'll put that in the link because it's a really fast way. If you know the location, you can zoom straight in and then you can use a slider to take away the original map to see what the location is on Google Map. So I thought that was really interesting because it was a really close close spelling to this place up at around Inverell. And it also did link when we started to look at, you know, there were plenty of these breastplates given out, and there would have been more than one King Sandy or Sandy who was a chief. So, you know, I think this is probably going to take a little bit more investigation to sort of match as close as possible this Korongori name. But we sort of sent it to a few Indigenous colleagues, and Professor Lyndall Rines had a look at it. She sort of made a point that, you know, that a lot of the Sandys were, you know, shorthand name for Alexander. So maybe there's a Scottish link relating to some of the land holdings up through New South Wales. She also did talk about and write about King Sandy, who was up around the Mile Creek area and the McIntyre River. So you can notice there's a lot of Scottish names. And also reached out to Bob Siren, and Bob, he's been looking into a lot of Indigenous place names, and again, his area of interest is in the Barrington area and Port Stephens, and said it could easily have been a misspelling, or, you know, a lot of these names weren't, of course, accurate, and they were just sort of engraved, could have really been a name of, yeah, many places. But I just thought it was worth really sharing with the community, just to find out from communities if they've got any history. This short, small little screenshot here shows the spelling of the Korongora, which is up at, was the one that was also mentioned in this pastoral stations map that's held by the State Library, that is incredible. I hadn't seen it before, and Lyndall Ryan pointed it out, and it sort of, yeah, covers the whole of New South Wales and has a lot of the names of those early pastoral leases. So we've shared on social media. If anyone has got any clues, any ideas, or, you know, want to send on to other people, it could be that there's that Singleton link. I know Robert Siren's looking into some of the blanket lists from that area to see if there's Sandy or, you know, any other documentation. But yeah, just encourage people to share. And if you've got any information, just leave a comment or contact me, and I can sort of send anything through to Dr. Clark.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Chip wonders whether it's a corruption of Ku-ring-gai.
Yes, well, that's where I think Bob Siren would be really
Very in.
because Bob is a gentleman has challenged the name Ku-ring-gai and identified that it's really a name that's connected to Port Stephens, not Northern Sydney. And yeah, Chip, that's a really good point.
All right.
Bob's doing some work.
Any questions for Anne? Doug, are you pointing or asking? I can't hear you. You're on mute.
I'm muted, mate. It's all right.
You were just pointing. Okay. All right. That's
Yeah.
good. All right. Okay. We'll move on. Okay. So next person on the list is Glenn Dormant. So Glenn and Tony are our Stories of Our Town partners, and they'll just provide a quick update on where they're up to, which again involves Aboriginal languages.
Yeah. Well, we're finally working hell for leather on this Threcold Biriban story. Hello, everyone. Hello. I can see people waving there. Yeah, we're really lost in the story. We've got a lot of great people, you know, Ray Kelly, and of course, John Maynard we've got this weekend. We've had other linguists. We've had John DeGravio himself, the man here. It's such a dense story. We started with about 5.5 hours, I think, of interviews, which we've now whittled down to about 50 minutes. There's a lot to cover. It's really, really dense, because it's not just about the preservation of the language. It's really about how important the journals were and what was contained in that, and sort of looking at what life was like for Aboriginal people in that early part of the colony through somebody who was actually empathetic to the Aboriginal cause. So there's so many parts. So we expect we'll be on that for another couple of months. We were going to do another one on petrol, the history of Newcastle and illegal drag racing and the hill climb and all these sort of things. And we had some great stuff. We've done about 60% of the interviews for that, but we were trying to tie that into supercars. Not that we wanted the supercars, but they looked like they were coming back. So we'll try to make that happen around there. And now that's been cancelled, we can get back onto getting this Threkold story together. But it's a lot of fun, but it's also immense. And like the Lysett film, we really want to get it right and tick every single box needs to be ticked. Do you have any questions about that? No? We're also trying to get a Castanet mural put up, which is unrelated, but also exciting. That's we did the Castanet film and we isolated a laneway between, it kind of runs at the back of Roundhouse, so the Kingsley building. It goes from Burwood Street through to, Wheeler Place. And there's a wall there, a very ugly wall that the big picture people have come on board and said, yes, we can get Michael Bell to put up a big Castanet Club sign. And that is kind of pretty much where the club was. So it's within, 10 metres. So that would be a very funny result of all these films. There you go.
Oh,
Is that enough, John?
That's fantastic, Glenn. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, you're doing God's work here. Thank you very much.
And this is our last year of Stories of Our Town in terms of the funding, isn't it? So we'll be bringing it all.
If you've got some spare money, anyone out there, just throw it our way. No, look, there's still great stories to tell. So we've got a few more to tell before.
Well, the stories of Newcastle won't stop, but
No, and we're also doing another little one. I should mention. So because Fortress Newcastle has done so well for us, it's been a really amazing film that Binge have picked up. So Foxtel have picked it up for their Fox Docs station, and that's so on Binge. Yeah, it's called Fox Doc on Binge. So if you've got a streaming service, that comes on for Anzac Day. So they picked it up, and it's wonderful that a Newcastle story is going to become their big documentary for that period. And we're making another one for Bob as part of that, which will be kind of a tourist information film that shows you where are all the sites that are in Fortress Newcastle that still exist today. So if you want to go, obviously, to Fort Scratchley, but the Armed Proof Range, which is up in sort of the back of Stockton there, we'll show you how to get into it. And don't go in summer though, full of snakes. That one in particular, very scary. So, but anyway, I'm going to make a little film for that. Yeah, so
unless they like snakes.
All right, no questions?
No, they look pretty good, I think.
Oh no,
are they waving or pointing? I don't know. Look,
I'm waving to you.
Okay, they're waving. Okay.
Okay, am I on? Yes, I am.
You are.
I was just going to say, you get into the Adamstown rifle range, and it definitely needs proper presentation. Just even photographing all the names of people that have been written up on that are graffitied along there, and so on. But that's there, and I wanted it in the International Park. But at least I've got the area around it is all in the Parks and Wildlife Archive. But look, it's not being looked after, and it's all the machinery which was all there, and it's gone. Oh, well, it's been burnt and rubbish, but it's worth having a look at. And the old, Wipers radar station and so on was smashed up by Boral, and the reserve that we had holding that. Has been because of the corruption in the Lands Department. It was handed back to Boral, I think. One of the Boral companies actually that are sand mining there. They're probably still sandy mining. I haven't been up there for some time now. Anyway, it's a great story, and of course Nelson Bay's you've got. No, and it's great, really good. And there's lots of stories of Newcastle.
There are.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Doug. Daria.
And I did want to tell you that you did get my photograph of the mural, didn't you? The old of the Castanets mural on the back of the old warehouse.
Yeah, is that the one you put up, Anne? Did you have something about that?
No, that was just a small portion of it. I'll talk after the meeting and get a copy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is, they're just trying to get a copy of the sign, and Michael Bell has offered to be part of that. So the original, Michael Bell painted that original Castanet sign when he was 18. So he's prepared to come back and be part of it. So and at the moment, Tim Crackenthorpe is actually taking it to the Attorney General to get that wall made available to us. So
that's great.
Yeah, well, it's
good
hysterical. It's weird, and I like weird. Okay,
good.
That's
okay.
why I'm here today with you guys.
Hang on, Glenn. You've got a question from Daria as well.
Yeah.
No, sorry, Johnny, it's not a question. I've got to go. I'm way over time. I've got to be at another meeting.
All right.
Apologies, everyone. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
Bye.
See you, Daria.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay.
I'll see you again.
All right. So Coral will
Can't
be
find
joining
my
us
mouse.
in 2 minutes. Anne, did you want to jump in with your fringe histories?
Yeah, sure thing. So this is just to give a plug to the Fringe Histories project that we have going all year. So every month there's going to be a topic and a theme, and it's basically a call out to postgrad students, new grads, researchers, people that particularly use our special collections and would like to write up a short blog post. So the word length is 150, 1,500 words. And if you just want to submit them the last Friday of the month, and we can sort of look over them. We thought it's a good way. I guess there's so many researchers and people doing some fantastic histories, writing things up, and just to get some feedback and some examples of how researchers are using our material. It's a good way of sort of promoting what's being used, how it's being used, and then, those fabulous histories that relate to the region. So even though we're called Hunter Living Histories, don't forget, like, our university also takes in Central Coast area. We talk a lot about Port Stephens and the Upper Hunter, so really quite broad in the way that the stories that we'll sort of publish. So keep that in mind. Put in your diary if you've got any ideas. And there's a couple of links down here to the NAIDOC Week theme, which is Get Up, Stand Up, Show Up. And then a definition to deep history, if people aren't too familiar with deep history. It sort of basically looks at histories relating to geology and our ancient landscapes, and so it brings in all those other disciplines relating to earth sciences, our natural history, and things like that.
Great, thank you very much, Anne. And Coral, you've joined us.
I know, that's terrible timing though, isn't it?
No, we held on to Daria as long, but it's okay. We've got Marilla, and Marilla can be just as excited for both Daria and herself, as well as all of us, okay?
I know. I didn't realise she'd be leaving before I started, but never mind.
It's okay. So you've got some news to share with us about...
Thanks, Johnny, and thank you for kind of giving me the reminder about this group and inviting me along. Just to provide everybody with a bit of context, one of the things that, in a sense, we've always provided opportunities for students to come and work with our teams, particularly our special collections team. And last year we set up a more formal kind of internship program to support student employability, but actually to help them more develop future life skills. And the projects are very much designed to provide a really valuable learning opportunity and to provide them with a variety of professional experiences. And so, look, everybody in the library, and particularly special collections, was, you know, really saddened with Vera's passing last year. And so I sat down with the Special Collections team and talked about how could we, you know, how could we mark her passing and how could we honour Vera? We've obviously already got the Regional History Fund set up. And so one of the things that we came up with and one of the things that we are introducing this year is a new internship for the library, which will be called the Vera Deakin Internship. You know, to recognise Vera, you know, we know she was a really strong and passionate supporter of the library and particularly Special Collections. You know, she was very generous and very supportive actually of our work with students, but also our work to, in a sense, open up regional history and to allow the team to acquire, preserve, catalogue and study that valuable regional historical archive of resources. And so it'll be a 12-month internship. It's valued for a student at about $12,000. So we will bring a student on board for 12 months. They'll work about 300 hours in with the team. And I think we're not particularly picking a project, but it's really to give them an opportunity to work with all of the team in Special Collections. They'll contribute to accessioning, digitisation projects, discoverability projects. They'll work across the, you know, the range of GLAM disciplines, but it'll just be a great opportunity for us to recognise, you know, on an ongoing basis of, you know, Vera, but obviously to, you know, to do something that we know was very, very passionate. So we will reach out to Daria and obviously let her know. We haven't formally launched it yet. We just wanted to come and tell this group first. Obviously, Vera was a passionate member of this group. And so, yeah, so I think that's it. Marla, I don't know whether there's anything else you wanted to kind of just provide in terms of the actual focus of the, you know, the internship.
No, Coral, I think you've pretty much covered it. I think it's just a fantastic opportunity for the intern to get a really great experience across our team and learning about the GLAM sector, but also to really discover our regional archives and to help bring those to the community and to the university community as well. So we can't wait to have them on board. While it won't be project specific, we do have lots of specific projects coming up that they will be working on. So they'll be a great help to us.
Yeah, and I think we're hoping the advert will be out for the students soon. We'll do the kind of promotion and launch across the university. Probably, I think it'll be the next week. It won't be this week. That's
yes.
interesting. Yeah, ideally for an undergraduate. Yeah.
You've seen the question from Chip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Coral. That's great news. I mean, we've been trying to stretch that Vera Deakin fund, and we never managed to get it over a year. So it's fantastic. Marilla, did you want to say anything on behalf of the family, or? Can't hear you.
Sound.
Okay,
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
You could now, okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's exciting that there's going to be enough money to cover a year. And I think Daria is extremely thrilled to get that extra mention of a mum at this time. And I think that Vera's influence is just going to go on and on and on. And hopefully we can keep that internship funded by community response if the university hasn't got the budget to carry it on for the second year.
Yeah, no, Marilla, the university will pay for the scholarship. It's not going to come out of the regional, you know,
fund. Okay, so it is for me.
It's like a bonus. It's a bonus. Yeah,
that's great
bonus, Johnny.
It is great news.
That is great news.
It's good news. It's good to start the new year with something really good, isn't it? Come on, this is good news. Jeez.
Yeah, and look, one of the things.
A round of applause. Good on you.
Bravo.
Johnny, the only other thing I would say, and Sarah and I will come back to the group, we've started to do some work with philanthropy to start to see whether there are other opportunities for us to generate income, which obviously would go into that fund, Marilla, to, you know, support more regional history projects.
Great.
So at the moment, we've just been doing some benchmarking across other university libraries, actually,
Yeah.
and other kind of public libraries, just to see what other activities people are doing.
Yeah.
So just to check it, it's for 1 year in the first instance, but
Yeah.
it could go to more.
Yeah. My view, well, as long as I'm here, it'll be an annual.
Beauty.
Internship, Marilla.
Wonderful. That's great news.
So,
Anyway, I'm just so sorry, Darian.
I know.
Daria's
Yes,
appointment
yes.
couldn't.
She's so busy. It's the
It's so
problem
good. I
at the
saw you
moment.
pop up there and I thought, you just missed it by that much.
She can.
But anyway.
She's going to watch it afterwards.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. That's good.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good news.
Yeah.
All right, wonderful. So
Yeah,
any
super,
other
thanks,
questions? I'm
Charlie.
sorry if there anyone with their hands up but anyway, thank you very much, Coral
Yep, super.
and
Thanks.
Marla. And thanks for being there for Vera's family, Marilla. So that's great. And I think we've got some chat stories. Okay, no, just good. What a fantastic opportunity, Coral. It'll be a very valuable experience for an intern. From Rachel. Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks, Rachel.
All right. Okay, so moving on. All right, well, I've got latest updates from the Hunter regional groups. If anyone has an update that they'd like to share. Yes, Ron.
Yeah, Johnny, just first off, I'd like to congratulate Rachel on the wonderful work that she did. And it was really our pleasure to be able to provide that opportunity. And unfortunately, we had to call off our Australia Day special open day because, as people are aware, the average age of our members and so on is over 70, and the executive just weren't prepared to take the risk with COVID. There was nothing else on that day apart from the swim across the harbour early in the morning. So we thought we might have been overrun, sort of thing, in terms of numbers. So it just wasn't safe. But this year is a particularly important year for the fort. It's one of the 3 anniversaries ones. It's 140 years of the fort. It is 80 years since the attack on Newcastle by the I-21, and it is 40 years for the society. And to celebrate those occasions, we're planning a gun firing and so on, and a dinner, which we hope to have the Governor General to, on the 8th of June, which is the anniversary of the attack on Newcastle. But that's all still in the planning stage, and we're sort of waiting on a response from the Governor General as to whether we have to spread our wings a bit further and maybe try the new New South Wales Governor and so on. So that's where we're up to. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Any other updates from the groups? Peter?
Yeah, John, I'm not sure whether everybody is aware that after 3 years of difficulties, we have found a coming together of the Maritime Museum Society and Newcastle City Council.
Oh.
That has led to an agreement that the council will be transferring the collection out of its current location at Carrington in the old dockyard Tallis site to the showground. And it will be stored at the showground for the next 3 years whilst we research its future options in a permanent display. The good news is, of course, that council is supporting the society again, and people are now talking again. The society has formally dissolved and is being restructured under a new format, and public membership is being sought. We're just waiting the final tick in the box from the Department of Fair Trading to finalise all of that. However, good news is the collection is safe and the future is looking a lot brighter.
Good. Thank you very much, Peter.
Yes.
Yes. Who just said yes?
Don.
Don?
Gianni, it's Don.
Was that you?
Don.
Okay. Yes, go ahead, Don.
The Dalwood Restoration Association is going to be holding another Descendants Day at Dalwood for all of this, any descendant of any of the Wyndhams, any of the 200 or so convicts who worked on Dalwood or their other properties, any of the German vine dressers who worked there, or any of the other employees who worked on Dalwood. And we know we've got about just over 200 of those as well.
What about the Italians that have no connection to it at all, but like wine?
Look, they're welcome to come and drink wine with us as well. We'll share wine with anybody. Even you, Johnny.
Okay, thank you very much, Don. So
Anyway,
have to be
this-
connected to the Wyndhams or convicts. I mean, that rules me out.
Is there any difference?
No.
Anyway, it's going to be held on the Saturday, the 3rd of September at in the old winery there at Dalwood, the one which Penfolds built in 1904. We had almost 200 people there at a similar function in 2019, and we're looking for something of the same order or more this year. And we're hoping to make it part of the Newcastle Hunter Valley Bicentenary celebrations.
Okay.
But that's just advance notice that Descendants Day at Dalwood, which is all encompassing anybody who's a descendant of anybody who's had anything to do with Dalwood.
Okay, thank you very much, Don.
Good.
John Whitty? I wrote to you this morning, John.
Yes, I'll get back to you in a minute.
Thank you, thank you.
I might call Kerry Bashford into the meeting as well. He's got a few things to say, and yeah. Well, the first thing is that we had our history of HIV and AIDS and the Hunter on the Newcastle Council storyboard, the digital library. We had that there for a month from World AIDS Day through to the 7th of January. And there were a few problems with it, and but fortunately it was transferred to their website, council website. So when you join the council website, you can see the full exhibition rolling through, including the sound bites and the photos. And I thought it was the whole point of it was that we could get more traffic into our page on the Living Histories website. I don't know whether that's happened or not. So we just need to have a talk to council and see what's happening with that. Now, I've been really busy with digitising articles, photos and ads in the Sydney Gay papers. From 1970 to 1998, and in that I'm finding some references to Newcastle's gay scene in the 1970s and 80s. There's not much here on the ground, and this is going to be of some help. And so that'll be coming up in the next couple of months. I finished an interview with Gray Sattler. That has to be written, to be processed and put up on the website. Gray was a Mayfield West person who was destined to become an engineer in the BHP, down in the harbour. And he was actually trained up and decided that wasn't his gig, and went to Newcastle Uni, was there when Newcastle Uni set up Newcastle Gay Liberation, and then went to Sydney and got involved in the response to HIV and AIDS in Sydney, was president of the AIDS Council for a short period of time. So it's an important interview. from somebody who left Newcastle and became important in both in New South Wales response to AIDS and also the United Nations, World Health Organization as well. The other thing I need to do was, look, I might just leave it at that. Oh yes, I'm working on a request from the State Library to create a page or a wall on a Newcastle history for Pride 2023. They're doing a history and it's always Sydney based, and we're trying to get Newcastle included. And we think we'll try to get the 1952 police blitz documented. All the court documents digitized, and maybe that could be a basis of an exhibition. I'm also working on the 1958 police blitz, in which one of the people had committed suicide, and I'm hoping to go to Sydney and find details on the post-mortem of that person, and then also in that group, the police also collected what they called obscene letters, articles in the Post, which basically would have been love letters between the men. And we don't have in Australian gay history a sort of a collection of letters between gay men in that period. So if I can actually find that down there, it'll be absolutely fabulous. And we could even sort of extend the terms of reference of our little exhibition for Pride 2023 and include those as well. So that's
great.
about it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, John. And you were going to invite Kerry. Kerry, are you there?
No, Kerry's not here, but he's sent me an email about it.
Okay.
And I'll talk to him about coming along to the meeting tomorrow.
All right.
It's 11 o'clock, isn't it? Something like that.
I think so. I haven't had an official, but I thought it'd be great to bring you in on it, since they're wanting to do a similar thing to what you've done with the help of Paige on our living histories, the rainbow histories. So
it would be good. I
said, look, even though your scope was hunter focused, the connections are very broad. So,
okay.
I hope you didn't mind me just wrapping you in.
That's fine.
Anyway, okay. Thank you very much, John. Any other updates from the groups or researchers, if you like? Kerry, did you want to give us an update on the City of Newcastle?
Yes, here I am. Okay. I just, we had a bit of an exciting delivery this week. I was just looking for a picture and I've just accidentally put a movie in instead. So the last, hopefully that one will work. There's a picture going in. So we had the last piece of our digital lab be delivered finally after 2 years. And it's our Treventus Scan Robot 2.0. So he turns the pages himself using a vacuum, which is really quite clever. So because the brand name is Treventus, we've decided to call him Trevor. So Trevor Treventus is now in the lab to be a bit more proficient in how to use him. And then we have to learn how to process the work. So it's all very exciting, but it's a bit scary at the same time. We're also assisting Miss Porter's house to digitize some of their collection for their own catalogue, which is great because then they'll be preserved and digitized. We had the Newcastle Family History Group come through the library for a visit on Friday, which was really good because it's the first time some of them have seen the lab, and that was really good. I don't know, can't think off the top of my head anything else. The postcards and pictures exhibition has finished. And so that one's coming down, and I do believe I could give a sneak preview. I think we're doing something about wine for History Week this year. So the exhibition this year will be something to do with wine. Seems to be a common theme. But other than that, it's just, back to it. The volunteers are back in, which is good. And so, that's about it, really. Nice to see everybody after a break.
Unmute myself. Well, thanks, Kerry, and welcome to 2022.
Yes, thank you. I'll load a couple more pictures.
Okay, very good. All right, while we wait for our other speakers to arrive, Anne, did you want to give us an update on the Museum of Clothing exhibit?
Yeah. I'll just quickly update. It was an email from Sandra Eels from the Clothing Museum of Clothing in Maitland. So she's basically doing a call out for students that might be interested in doing a placement. And then there's another small paid position. So I've sort of already reached out to a few academics and historians. So this part of their collection belongs to Muriel Windia McKay, and it was donated back, I think, early 2000s by her nephew. She's a really interesting lady, and she was sort of describing that the volunteers have started to sort of have a look at, like, she's got like 30 outfits, but there's also a lot of photographs, memorabilia, documents, and this lady's got quite an incredible life. I just did a quick Trove search last night, and the first 3 or 4 entries that came up, like she featured in a film in Sydney. Her war work, she was like almost on the front line, involved in also the UN, and I think they do have her uniform for when she was in the UN. Her father's got an interesting entry on Wikipedia. He was a general, one of the really early GPs up at Raymond Terrace, so there's quite a regional link. But yeah, the work that they'd be really interested in a student to do is go through, accession some of the items, do a timeline, do a little bit more history, just to create a bit more of a story around this lady. Like I said, she doesn't have a lot of family, but they're hoping to have an exhibition at the end of the year at Rough House. So someone could also get experience in museum studies and curation, and it just sounds a really fabulous opportunity for the right student that's interested in clothing. So if anyone's interested, just contact me and I'll put you on to introduce you to Sandra.
And you also attended the reopening of the Edgeworth David Museum on the weekend?
Yeah, so that was on Saturday. The relocation, they used to be there at Curry School, and now they're on Cessnock Road at Abermain in the old School of Art. So it's a much bigger and I think safer location for them to be in. Open Tuesday and Thursdays and every Sunday. So I'll pop a link in if anyone's interested. You don't need an appointment. You can call in, but it's reopened after, I think it's a couple of years. It's taken them 2 or 3 years to relocate. But yeah, just a fabulous location, and I think they'll actually get a lot of visitors from other parts of the region that are driving through.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Anne. We're still waiting for Peter to arrive from the Maritime Museum in Sydney. So I'm just wondering if I should just share my screen with regards to the latest updates. Here we go. Can you see that okay? So this is just a precursor for next week, or next month, sorry. We've got Warwick Schofield will be presenting on the quest for Sturt's underground room. So I didn't know what an underground room was, but it's a bunker basically that's been constructed by Sturt's expedition in 1845 to get out of the heat of the day and make repairs to their equipment. Anyway, Warwick has been on the case trying to find this relic of early European exploration for the last 30 or so years, and approached us to see whether there would be interested surveyors or archaeologists who would be interested in properly documenting the site and creating a survey. So we pulled together a post on all the information that he could provide for us, and we'll just see what comes of it. So if you know anyone that's interested in, I figured that given the fact that everyone's been in lockdown for the last 3 years of some description, I'm sure there would be people really interested in traipsing 14 hours into the west. So you never know. People could be daring to have a project like this, and it's a small area, so it's pretty well achievable. And see what could come of it. And so it's all part of a tourist boost that the state government is trying to provide in that area. So you never know what can happen with these things. So that's in next month's showcase in March. And this morning, I've put up one of a couple of reports that we've digitised, which we acquired last year, thanks to collector Ross Edmonds. So this one is the report on the entrance to the Macleay River by a fellow called Sir John Code, which also he wrote a number of reports on Lake Macquarie and a number of harbours around Australia. He was a civil engineer that was basically called out here to examine, inspect our port facilities and suggest what could be done to improve them. So we've scanned the maps in high res so we can actually see them, and they'll look absolutely fantastic on Kerry's lovely display over in the digital library in town. And they'll also look fantastic in this new mini version that we've got here. So I've been having a lot of fun blowing up some of these images on these machines because they look absolutely fantastic and the detail's great. And it beats the little laptops and the little computers that we get. So the largest you've got access to viewing these things, the better. So that just went up today. So the full report is up there as well. I've got another one on the deepening of the Hunter River, which we've also digitized. So we'll get that up soon as well. All right, now just to see how to stop the share. Good. Now has Peter arrived?
Now he's just sent a message just saying he's a couple of minutes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so he'll be here
All
with
right.
us
Well,
shortly.
look, I can just spend a couple of minutes bringing your attention to this lovely background I have behind me, which was curated by Paige. Thank you very much, Paige. There's some more praise for Paige because she curated this lovely thing, which is basically an example. There's Paige making an appearance. So we've got everything there for all my needs.
Could I just make a comment, Johnny?
Where are you? Who spoke?
It's Howard Dick.
Howard, go ahead.
No, you mentioned Sir John Coode. He
Yes.
was, you might say, the greatest British harbour engineer of his day. So he was a very famous person who did a lot of work at Melbourne, but also at many other harbours around Australia. But he was a worldwide phenomenon. He was all over the place. So it's interesting to see his work show up in a small place like the Macleay. But yeah, he was a global figure in the engineering world of that time. Just as a
well, that's good because I didn't know much about him. I just checked out his his Australian Dictionary of Biography entry, because I've seen his name pop up a number of times, especially when we did a bit of a series on Aboriginal spiritual beings around Lake Macquarie, and his name came up with regards to one of those, because obviously he was interested in the harbour at Lake Macquarie as well. So they called him out to inspect these places, and he would suggest what needed breakwaters and things like that. Is that what I'm assuming, Howard? Okay.
Yeah, and in New Zealand as well.
So what made him so brilliant? I mean,
he had a very good understanding of tidal flush. Essentially, he mobilised natural currents and retaining walls to maintain harbour entrances as far as possible without dredging. And this was a value right around the world because steamers were coming in and ships were getting bigger. And you minimised shipwrecks, you got a greater reliable draft in and out of a port, like Newcastle, for example. But I suspect, like other consultants, he had a team of people working for him, and not everything that had his name on it was necessarily drawn up by him personally, but that I'm just guessing. But he was a very capable man indeed. So. He was the man, by the way, who chopped several miles out of the Yarra River in Melbourne. But for those who are Victorians, that he's very well remembered.
Well, I think he was also mentioned in Fremantle. He
yes,
did work
indeed,
there,
he was.
everywhere.
Yes.
So
anyway, enough on that.
That's okay. Fantastic. We'll expect a few of these reports to be flowing through. We had some wonderful acquisitions last year. Paige, did you want to mention a couple of those? Because they're really beautiful things, and we didn't expect we'd ever get them, but we got them. And so bit by bit, we'll be populating the digital space of your world with these wonderful resources.
Yeah, sorry. We got some great Kelmscott Press original printed books from the arts and crafts movement of William Morris, and we also got a really beautiful leather-bound copy of the Rubaiyat that was bound in Australia by a famous arts and crafts movement binder. So that's really beautiful to behold. It has a very wonderful grape motif on it. So yeah, we've got a lot of great new rare books purchases, but it's just so awkward for me talking with this mask on, so sorry.
Thanks, Paige. Anyway, we're still waiting for Peter, but I see that Tim Krakenthorpe, our state member for Newcastle, has joined us, so we might jump to you. You've got some great news for Wickham School of Arts, and a number of our people here have been very interested in that area.
Yeah, thanks very much, Gioni. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, look, first of all, I want to say thank you for getting me on today. It's great to be here, and I have a great love of history, and in Newcastle in particular, and a passion for it too. So I think you do great work, and it's wonderful to be here. But I also want to thank you all for your advocacy with regards to the Wickham School of Arts site, because the last thing we wanted to see was this site going the same way as the store and the store facade. And it's through the advocacy of groups such as yourself and others that have got a commitment from the government to not only keep this building, but to also make sure that it's repaired, it's made safe, and it's used in the upcoming development for the site, which will be known as Honeysuckle HQ or headquarters, which will be part of the new Ministry for Cities under Rob Stokes, which they're looking to do a bit more of a contemporary and while also respecting the history of that site, as they have done at Barangaroo. So the same person running this project now, so it's not HCCDC directly, will be running the Honeysuckle HQ project. But I did have a good conversation with Rob Stokes some time ago, and he was devastated that the store facade actually went. And he said if he was the minister at the time, he would have made sure that was saved. And it was thanks to Mr. Castle that went. And yeah, it's very disappointing to see that disappear. But yeah, look, I wrote to the former Minister Rob Stokes some time about the Wickham School of Arts, and we've got the commitment out of the government. So if you drive past it, as many of us do sort of on a daily basis, you'll see that it's fenced off. They're making it good. They're doing repairs. They're taking away other outlying buildings, and they'll keep that. And then when they assess the tenders for renewal of those 2 blocks, they'll make sure that it's renewed in a way that retains its history and is respectful of that, and has some adaptive reuse for it. So that's it, Gioni. Open to questions, but that's the update.
Yes, yes. Any questions for Tim? We've had a few passionate Wickham School of Arts people, such as Ross Edmonds, that helped track down the Henry Lawson connections. Jude Conway, we've had Leslie Gent with the ADFAS people that have really done histories for all the schools of arts. So it's just fantastic to have it there, because I don't know, it just represents this sort of the gestating of creative talent that can come out of libraries, I guess. And these schools of arts were these sorts of places, you know, the big sort of figures like Henry Lawson. Sorry, Doug,
and working class education.
Yes, yes.
That's the most vital. We had the same fight up here. We had a huge fight to keep the one at Lawson, which is right on the highway, but it's kept, thank God, and active in community usage. Yeah.
Yeah, well done, Mirella.
I'm very interested in it too, Gioni and Tim, and lovely to see you too, Tim. My knowledge of the building, of course, it's only since the police boys were operating from it, and Sergeant Savage was there. But my dad, when he was superintendent here, he raised the funds and gave the funds to the boys, police boys, to build a new site to get them out of there. So it's been very difficult that to see that it being just left to rot. It was really tragic. Really tragic, and it's wonderful to see that it is being found, and also it's interesting to hear that somebody in government was interested in the old cooperative store, because it was really such an important part of Newcastle.
My mother's first job was there, Doug.
Oh, right.
She was in the wages office in the top right-hand corner. Every time I passed the building, I'd wave to the spirit of Mum.
And we've got a question from Kerry. Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Mirella.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Mirella.
Kerry,
it's not so much a question. I put in the chat the link. So the architects lodged the latest heritage report with the library in its digital form. Ooh. So I've uploaded that and it's on the library catalogue. Now that's there are plans, there is the PDF of the report. There are also actual photographs, but there are also 3D renderings of the building. And there's also a really awesome video where they sort of fly through the building. However, it's so big that I'm having trouble getting the collection management system to cope with it. But if you go to that link I've put in the chat, you'll see the whole report is there, plus all the photographs, plus the plans. And the previous heritage report back in 2000 is also on the library catalogue if you wish to look at that one. So all the information is there ready for everyone to see.
That's great. Thanks, Kerry, because we didn't know whether the building was still going to be there. And I think And was someone contacting us about it? We said, oh, well, can we do like a three-dimensional
This
version?
was years
like a
and years
hologram
ago.
almost.
And it's really good. I just had a quick look at what you shared, Kerry, and it's fabulous. I think it's probably one of the best heritage reports I've seen. And to have that Matterport, so you got the 3D fly through, even if it was demolished, not that we want it demolished, but it's a great way of getting the archive board of a building. And
yeah, if I can work out how to get the video to load, I've tried shrinking it and that hasn't worked. But but the pictures tell the word, tell the story.
Yeah.
The Living Histories platform was able to take in the Matterport of the McMullen building, so we had a complete 3D rendered object in that absorbed, which is pretty good. So it'd be good to connect these sorts of things later, but hopefully we won't have to worry about the building disappearing so that we need a three-dimensional. And that's the thing, Tim. It's always wonderful, you know, telling people stories about Newcastle. It's always also wonderful if you can bring them into the same spaces and places, you know, because it's like we've always got to 3D render these historic places because they've just all disappeared. In part due to the fact that Newcastle's always been one of these places where things are done. So history's never had a chance to sort of, we've always had to knock it over to do something new. So it's sort of a victim of its own success in a way. But still, it's wonderful news. So thank you very much for joining us today and just letting us know.
Yeah, my pleasure. And council too, they also advocated to keep it. So, and the community. So yeah, a great effort to everyone. Thank you. And we'll be keeping a very close eye on it and making sure that they do a good job.
Well, it's great to start the year with so much good news. I don't know what I'm going to do.
We need it. We need it. That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you. I'll sign off and yeah, all the best to everyone.
All right. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Thanks, Jan.
All right. I'm not sure that Peter's still delayed, I think.
Yeah, I don't think he's joined us. I might just send him a text and see if we can, if he wants to just hold off till next meeting.
All right. See, if this was the Mike Walsh show, I'd bring out Jeannie Little, or I'd who was the musician on that did all the? He'd play a tune.
Jeff Harvey.
Jeff Harvey.
Jeff Harvey.
Jeff Harvey. You see. I love you people because when I mentioned it here in special collections, everyone said, "What? Who?" And I thought, "Oh God, I'm too old. I'm too old." I remember Mike Walsh. Is he still alive? I think he is. But anyway. So anyway,
I'm sure he's tucked away in the NBN.
do you like this format better than the formal meeting thing? Or
That's nice.
I think it's better. It's more informal, and I think if we can get into a more conversational style, even if you have research that you want to share, doesn't have to be an official society thing, but just anything. I mean, the idea is to basically get a sense of what's going on out in the community, so we can link in our academic and student and resources into all this, so we can see what's going on. Because the university is very committed to having real world experience for the students, and I think it's just so much better for them when they're involved in these kind of projects, because they live on, and as Paul Scott once told me, they don't end up in the stairwell, under a stairwell somewhere. They end up out there where they're made use of. So yes, so I think yeah, well, Peter was going to join us today. I hope he can still make it, but I doubt it. And what do you think?
But the email he sent, it was just, sounded as if he was pretty busy.
Okay.
Running late. So, he hasn't joined us unless he gets the last couple of minutes.
That was going to be very exciting because he's in the thick of the Endeavour find in the US. So I was looking forward to hearing what he had to say. Especially when you're onto something big when there's controversy around it. So, but I'm not sure that we'll hear from him today. We'll hang on.
He's just
here he is. He's
now.
just joined. My gosh. I was just about to send your apologies, Peter. But anyway, we've got a lot of thank yous for Peter because Peter, when he was at Artefact Heritage, sent us on the road for funding for the Fortress Newcastle project. So anyway, I don't want to take up too much of your time. Over to you, Peter, Head of Knowledge.
Thanks, everybody, and I appreciate you joining me, and I very much appreciate your patience. As you can imagine, it's been a very interesting week at the Australian National Maritime Museum. And nice to see so many faces I know out there too, and thank you also for all of you who've been working on the Fortress Newcastle program. Look, I don't have a formal presentation for you today, but what I wanted to do was, I imagine you're interested in why last week my director, Kevin Sumption, made an announcement about the identity of the shipwreck RI 2394 in Newport Harbour, which the museum has decided is the last resting place of His Majesty's bark Endeavour. Now, just a quick background on this vessel. It was launched in 1764 as the Earl of Pembroke, and then in 1768 was surveyed and then purchased by the Royal Navy for Cook's voyage to the South Pacific, which was to take in, of course, the transit of Venus in Tahiti and then sail onward to find the Great Southland. Now, obviously, that voyage included charting parts of New Zealand, or a large part of the New Zealand coastline, and the east coast of the Australian continent. And as many of us are aware, of course, there's an extraordinarily contested history about that voyage, both in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and also in Australia. And it's not my place to speak on behalf of Aboriginal people. I know they have their own voices and stories and memories that they would like to share about this event, but the museum is certainly very aware that there was always a view from the shore as well as a view from the ship too. So we don't tend to call it a voyage of discovery. We do tend to call it an encounter between multiple cultures, different Aboriginal peoples and also Maori peoples, as well as European voyagers. Now, having returned to England via a somewhat unplanned stop on the Great Barrier Reef and a semi-planned stop in Batavia, now Jakarta, this amazing vessel, Endeavour, returned to the UK, and you would think it would have gone straight into a museum. Well, actually, no, instead it was sent to the Falkland Islands. And so from 1771 until 1774, the Royal Navy made use of this small, very strongly built coal-carrying ship, or collier, mostly for supplying outposts in the Falkland Islands and also going to the Baltic. By 1775, though, it was in such bad condition that it was actually sold out of Admiralty service and purchased by a private merchant. Now, that merchant then renamed the vessel Lord Sandwich, so it had now had three names. It had been originally Earl of Pembroke, then in 1768 it became Endeavour, and then in 1775 it became Lord Sandwich. So there's a bit of confusion there. And to cut a long story short, by 1776, British in North America were so desperate to get troops to go and fight the American rebels that they were hiring pretty much anything that floated, including this vessel recently renamed Lord Sandwich. It had to go through an extensive refit, like a large proportion of its timbers actually had to be pulled out and replaced for the Admiralty to accept it was fit for carrying troops across the Atlantic. Even then, they weren't sure about it. And in fact, it embarked a group of Hessians, in other words, German mercenaries, who were being paid by the British to go and fight the Americans in North America, particularly the northeast of North America, sailed over to New York, went up to Rhode Island, which is north of New York, and then basically sat in Newport Harbour in 1777 and into 1778. Come 1778, the ship was basically a hulk. It wasn't quite reduced, but it was not in good shape. It was turned into a prison hulk to hold what I guess the Americans would call patriots. In other words, those who were loyal to the American Revolution. So the British troops who were occupying Newport Harbour were keeping prisoners on board. Then comes August 1778, and the French decide to join in this conflict as well. So they sent over a fleet who tried to lay siege to Newport Harbour. And as one of 13 block ships that were deliberately sunk around Newport Harbour, Lord Sandwich had a couple of large scuttling holes punched in its bottom. It sank to the bottom of the harbour with its masts sticking up above the water, basically to stop French vessels from approaching too close to the shore to bombard the town with their 18th century cannon. So just a couple of points on that. Firstly, it had been a prison ship. So it had stopped sailing, basically. It had become a prison ship. What we know of prison ships used during the American Revolution is that they were not nice places to be, a little bit like the convict hulks that you imagine, in the Thames at about the same period. It had basically been stripped of everything. All the artifacts, all the material that had been there from, Cook's voyage was long gone. And these prisoners also basically swept the decks and threw everything overboard every day because they were terrified about disease. So anyway, come 1778, August 1778, these holes are punched in the vessel. It sinks to the bottom of the harbour, and it's noted on both French and British plans of the site for several years afterwards as one of 13 transports sunk at that time. Then it's largely forgotten for the next century or so. Very occasionally, locals in Newport Harbour, now that the Americans are free of the pesky British rule, locals in Newport Harbour remember this wreck. They think they know where it is, but it's fairly quickly forgotten. Rhode Island is a maritime state. It's actually one of the I think it is the smallest in the Union, the state of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations. Newport Harbour is a very busy place. Some of us may recall it from 1983 when when a very famous Australian vessel, the Australia 2, won the America's Cup. So it's that same harbour, but it's a very, very busy port city that is subject to silt and sludge building up on the ocean bottom. Come 1998, a couple of Australian historians, particularly Des Liddy, had been doing some historical work, and they thought, Cook's Endeavour seems to have been renamed Lord Sandwich when it was sold into private hands. At about the same time, Dr. Cathy Abbas, who was an archaeologist living in Rhode Island, read Des and Mike's report from Australia and thought, I wonder if that's one of the transports that was sunk in Newport Harbour. So I certainly want to give credit to Cathy and the Rhode Island Marine Archaeology Project for being heavily involved in this program since 1999. I could go on, it's an exciting narrative, but basically from 1999 until this year, there's been an on-again, off-again program of historical research, underwater archaeology, and analysis of artefacts from a series of sites around Newport Harbour. There was a whole range of them. They're all protected under Rhode Island state law. In fact, technically, they're subject to US federal law, but in 1999, the Rhode Island government actually successfully took charge of these wrecks. And they therefore maintain access to them, including permits to dive and permits to excavate all the sites under permits issued under the Rhode Island Historic Preservation and Heritage Commission. So basically, archaeologists from the Australian National Maritime Museum have been going to and from Rhode Island since 1999. The local volunteers have been working very hard, diving on the site, keeping an eye on it, sifting through materials brought up from the site, of which there are actually very few, like staggeringly few. Over the years, we've been building profiles of many wrecks in Newport Harbour, but my predecessor at the Australian National Maritime Museum, Dr. Nigel Erskine, in 2016 went to the UK where he looked at some records, particularly at the National Archives in the UK, which narrowed the search area dramatically because it turned out that Lord Sandwich was only one of 5 shipwrecks sunk to the north of Goat Island in Newport Harbour. And that made life a lot simpler, a lot easier for us to narrow down the wrecks because now there were only potentially 5. There are 4 major candidate wrecks there. We think one's probably disappeared, either being completely removed or scoured in the harbour. And so since 2017, we've been really focusing on a series of sites, particularly RI 2394. It's not very picturesque name for the site, but it is the largest of the 4 main shipwreck sites just north of Goat Island in Newport Harbour. So I could continue, but I guess we get to the point now where we say, how did you decide that RI 2394 is Endeavour? Well, this is where I'm about to go. Sorry, no, just kidding. Working with RIMAP, our partners in the United States, we agreed a series of criteria. And I guess this is where, as scholars, we would say that we've come to a few points of, we could say, epistemological difference. In short, they believe that we need to find a signature artifact, something like a ship's bell or a teaspoon with Cook's name on it, or some other identifiable piece of wreckage that will pin the story down to identifying this vessel as Endeavour and particularly connecting it with Cook. Look, I'm a historian, not a maritime archaeologist, but my maritime archaeologists have both dived on wrecks for at least 25 years, in some cases up to 40 years, and they've very rarely found any of those signature artifacts. So their perspective is that what they have to do is collate vast amounts of the surviving evidence from this underwater site. And as Dr. James Hunter, one of the 2 archaeologists, says, people still think of this kind of Scooby-Doo idea of a shipwreck, that, you know, it's an intact Spanish galleon sitting on the ocean floor with its masts and a bit of rigging waving in the ocean currents. Well, no, it's actually a few rotting pieces of wood, a few pieces of stone ballast, and 4 cannon that are lying on the ocean floor under a great amount of silt on Newport Harbour. And so basically, the team, not me, I'm a historian. The archaeologists have assembled a large amount of evidence looking at elements such as the length of the hull, as far as we can determine from the surviving remains, the construction methods used, particularly in the bow or the front of the ship, where there's a very unusual form of joint that we think is unique to colliers built in Whitby in the late 18th century, like Endeavour. What they call scantlings, which is a word I'd not heard of until I arrived at the National Maritime Museum, which basically means the size of the timbers that you use to build a ship have to be a certain dimension in order to sustain a ship of that size, and the bigger the ship, the bigger the timbers. And these scantlings that we've been able to measure when we can excavate have closely matched those found on the Admiralty's 1768 recordings of what was then the Earl of Pembroke when it became Endeavour.
Yeah, okay.
And I guess finally, we've been looking at very small details like the locations of the bilge pumps, which are, the little bits in the bottom of the ship that pump out water to stop it sinking, and also where we have a strong suspicion the mast of this vessel were. And when we add up all of that evidence, my director, Kevin Sumption, came to the conclusion that, on balance, all of this evidence added up to this vessel of this size, this age, comprising these measurements and these particular timber sizes and this particular joinery, could be nothing other than His Majesty's bark Endeavour, which sunk under the name of Lord Sandwich. So that's where we're at. Of course, the story is much longer and more convoluted than that, but I'm happy to take questions if you've got any. I see Kerry's had her hand up for a while.
Kerry?
Sorry, no, that's my hand up from before. I can't work out how to take it down. Sorry. But that's very exciting.
Yeah.
Any questions for Peter? Thank you very much, Peter.
Yeah.
And look, yep.
Yeah, just Peter, sir. About the deliberate sinking, was that a war tactic used a lot, or just this one time, a few times in the Revolutionary War? Was that a common thing British would do, with deliberately sink ships?
Now, firstly, I'll say I'm a 19th and 20th century historian, so for me to be going back to the American history in the 18th century is something I'm learning a lot about. But broadly, yes. There's also quite a range of scuttled ships at Yorktown, which is the scene of another famous battle in the War of Independence. So it was also used elsewhere, in other tactics over the 17th and 18th centuries. But broadly, yes. Obviously, you wouldn't sink your best vessels. You would only sink vessels that you weren't keen on. But a lot of them were also weighed, or in other words, raised again afterwards once the threat had passed. And so that's one of the other things we have to think about here, is that although 13 ships were sunk, or vessels were sunk in 1778, some of them probably were brought up again afterwards, and there wasn't such a good record of that. Most of those, if they were weighed or raised again, tended to re-enter Lloyd's Register of Shipping. So we would have some record that they'd return to service after that. And that's been particularly the case with a tricky vessel named Peggy. Now, Peggy is one of the possible wrecks that could be about the same size as Endeavour in Newport Harbour. Problem is there were 5 Peggies in 1778. We've tracked down all 5 of them. And from what we can see, only one of them seems to have disappeared from Lloyd's Register in 1778 and not come back again. So, and that is an American-built vessel of about 200 tonnes, whereas Endeavour is an English-built vessel of about 360 tonnes. And that's one of the reasons why we're confident that the largest wreck site in Newport Harbour is the remains of Endeavour.
Any other questions?
Yes, Johnny, to
Yes,
Peter.
Peter, yep.
As somebody that over the last 25 years has done about 5 voyages on the replica Endeavour from the museum, I'm very interested. Do you have a future plan for the wreck?
Look, yes and no. I'll emphasise again, this wreck is in Newport Harbour in Rhode Island. It is at the moment under the custodianship of the Rhode Island state government, and we have no claim on it. We certainly don't intend to raise it. We're very clear about that. Best management for shipwrecks these days is to leave them in situ and untouched as much as possible. We find that, for instance, when you look at the submarine AE2 off Gallipoli or the Japanese midget submarine M24 off Sydney Heads, the best practice for maintaining shipwrecks and preserving them is to leave them in place and to disturb them as little as possible. So we don't intend to bring it up. We're certainly not chasing millions of dollars to lift it up and pull it out of Rhode Island. Speaking to the maritime archaeologists at the museum, we think the best practice for this site is to probably continue a limited program of excavation under local permits so that we can continue to investigate. We'll never rule out the possibility of finding that, James Cook teaspoon. There could possibly be an artefact like that there. So we do think there's value in continuing excavation if we're invited to do so. But otherwise, really the main thing is sandbagging. It sounds very basic, but actually having a team of divers go down and lay sandbags on top of the wreck stops scouring. In other words, currents and ocean movements from grinding away even more of what's left of the wreck. It also protects it from physical damage. For instance, from what we can see, there's something like a telegraph or electricity cable that's been dragged to and across the wreck because it was laid across Newport Harbour at some point. It also will protect it from, how should we put it, unscrupulous recreational divers who might want to go down and chip off a bit of wood. And of course, then there should probably be a series of patrols and possibly markers just to make sure that people do stay clear of the wreck so that they don't either willfully or accidentally damage the site further.
Thank you. And Don mentioned in one of the chats that his great-great-great-great-grandfather, John Wilkinson, was the shipbroker who purchased the HMV Endeavour.
Oh, I thought I saw that in there. Yes, thank you. Wow. That's extraordinary. So the connections continue.
So, Peter, you could have left us on a cliffhanger and then I could have gone into the same bat time, same bat channel for next month. But any other questions? I'm glad you all hung around past our 3. There were a number of apologies I would have liked to, but they had...
and I am so sorry. You can just imagine that look, every meeting I've had has been interrupted by many phone calls and emails.
And look, Pete, I just want to share with you, I just got inspired by the old Mike Walsh show. I don't know if you were young enough to remember that.
I do remember Mike.
We'll see. I thought, and I saw all this furor going on about this record. I said, I'm going to get Peter Hovens on the show.
Timely.
So thank you very much but see, Mike Walsh would always bring his big guns out first, and then the whole show would flow off on that. But thank you very much for making time to come and talk to us about it.
It's a pleasure and a privilege. And look, what you guys do at Hunter Living Histories is awesome. You know that I'm a big fan of community-based history, and you particularly, I think, lead the way around Australia in what you're doing. And I mean that in a very heartfelt way. So
well, thank you very much, Peter. Look, there was one thing I just wanted to mention, is that the sadness that came to me is that here was a story about a shipwreck that I could just feel the rifts in the country start to grind, because we've just had the exhibition Unsettled at the Australian Museum, where we've got the Aboriginal perspectives of Cook's voyage, and we've got this real problem with words like exploration and discovery, and that weren't really discoveries because we had people here. How do you feel working in this space when you've got a situation where our histories aren't settled, and having a discovery like this that you want people to be happy for, because there's a lot of work that goes into these things, but how do you bring people together into the same story?
Look, it is a hard one, as I said before. We do obviously have an Indigenous programs team at the museum, and we did work very hard in 2020 when we were planning to sail Endeavour along the East Coast. We knew that would cause a lot of controversy and pain, particularly for Aboriginal peoples along the East Coast. So we did think long and hard about that, and language is all important. I'm on a Reconciliation Action Plan working party at the moment, and Uncle Shane Williams from down at La Perouse said to me, one word can do enormous damage if you use the wrong word. So we have tended to use words like voyaging and encounters and contact because it is more mutual. But I've said, I actually think archaeologists lead the way here, and I say that as a historian who works a lot with archaeologists. There's been increasing concern even about how we use the word contact, because it still implies something of an equal power relationship that you don't always see in those encounters. It clearly was very different perspectives and very different approaches. On the other hand, I do still think there is an extraordinary achievement to be celebrated in this vessel. Endeavour went from, you could it's almost like a human story. This humble working class person from, the north coast of England goes voyaging around the world, is neglected and forgotten, buried in an unmarked grave, and then lo and behold, they come back to life again. Maybe that's jazzing it up a little bit too much, but there is an amazing story in there. And I think it did change the world. I think whatever we say about particular legacies in the South Pacific, Endeavour changed the world. It changed the way the world looked at itself in the Pacific and in Europe. And I think that even the word Endeavour, I think, is really interesting. I think that sums it up more than anything else. That spirit of Endeavour, that feeling of Endeavour.
Yeah, and that Transit of Venus, which was one of the most, globally unified projects to study an astronomical thing while these countries were still at war with one another. I thought that was an achievement, but that all gets squashed, away. So anyway, look, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for staying 20 minutes over the playtime. Thank you very much, Peter. Lovely to see you again. And thank you very much on behalf of all of us up here, because your work on the Fortress Newcastle was sort of done behind the scenes, and it was just wonderful, because I think that project's really been going from strength to strength, and it's thanks to you behind the scenes. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone. I'll see you next month for another episode of the Mike Walsh Show. Sorry. The Living History Showcase Hour, or 2 hours or something. And anyway, bye-bye.
Bye. That was so good. So good.